George Stinney was born in the small town of Alcalu, South Carolina in the early 1940s, when the world to him was filled with dreams and simple joys, serene games on dusty streets, the ringing laughter of friends, and quiet evenings with a loving family. His childhood, despite the hardships of the segregation era, radiated a light of hope and faith in a better future. I remember George running delightedly through its narrow streets, where every nook and cranny held the warmth and simplicity of life. A dream shone in his eyes, unknown yet to the nature of the cruel reality that was soon to change his destiny. Every morning in the small school, where teachers tried to impart knowledge and love to the children, showed the purity and genuineness of a child's heart. These moments of carefree childhood, when every day gave new discoveries, seemed magical amidst the harsh reality of the time. George, like all children, dreamed of a big world, a world where good triumphs over evil and dreams become reality. In his simple joys read the fragile beauty of life, which he was ready to enjoy, not suspecting that around the corner is already ripening a storm that could forever change his fate. This innocence, so bright and pure, would later become a contrast to the brutal realities of the inhuman justice that took his life. Listening to the sounds of the village streets, one can almost feel the warmth of those days when George was just a boy, full of dreams and hopes. We begin this story with a respectful look at that bright part of his life that, despite all the hardships, remained a true source of childhood faith and goodness. One fateful day when heavy clouds covered the sky, George Stinney's fate changed abruptly. On that day, a young boy, barely out of his teens, was suddenly and ruthlessly drawn into a maelstrom of accusations based on nothing but prejudice and public fear. He found himself in the midst of a terrifying storm of injustice. He was captured without giving him a chance to understand what he was being accused of. Time stood still for a moment as his eyes reflected bewilderment and the first chill of realization that his life would never be the same again. The invisible walls of segregation, so inseparable from everyday life, shrank around him in that moment like a mortal frame that sealed his fate. That day was a turning point. Every word, every look, every action of the authorities and those around him penetrated his soul, leaving a heavy imprint that he had to bear for the rest of his life. In those moments when fear and pain mingled in his core, it became clear that the world he lived in was too harsh to accept a child. Dreaming of a simply normal life, an unknown darkness struck young George, and on that single day, his fate was sealed, even if that injustice would long continue to bring tears and anger to all those who had instilled in him a belief in human justice. After that fateful day when George Stinney's young life was ruthlessly cut short, a sense of profound loss prevailed throughout the county. The news of his fate shook the local community, and then the entire nation, causing a wave of anger, grief, and realization of cruel injustice. The streets of the small Union town were lined with people, whose faces reflected pain and shock, and every word in the press, every news report became a mute rebuke against a system that had failed to protect an innocent child. There were quiet conversations in homes about how the tragedy could have happened this way, and how this loss symbolizes the terrible reality of racism that pervades society. Locals gathered at the monuments, lit candles and silently mourned the loss, and every image of George, found on the weathered newspaper pages, was a reminder of how ruthlessly hope in the human heart had been destroyed. These days were a shining example of what every life that follows must learn, to remember that innocence must not be victimized by prejudice, and the voice of truth must rise above the walls of injustice. This collective grief reflected not only the personal tragedy of the family, but also the sadness of an entire nation, realizing that even the purest of souls can be broken by a system ruled by fear and hatred. George Stinney's story was a painful but instructive lesson for the entire nation. His tragic fate awakened a desire for change, became a symbol of the struggle for justice and equality, and inspired many to actively resist systemic injustice. Decades after his death, George's memory has not faded. Monuments, memorials, and art installations have sprung up depicting his image, a symbol that innocent lives should not be trampled by biased laws. Young activists, civil rights activists, and ordinary people are elevating his story to a national symbol, reminding us that every life lost is a challenge to a system that can awaken centuries of inaction. We see people demanding change through street demonstrations, meetings, and protests. Every voice, every action is an echo of George's memory, a testament that no one is forgotten. His name has become just one of the symbols of the struggle for human dignity and justice, and his story lives on in the hearts of those who disagree with iniquity. The memory of George Stinney serves as a reminder. It is only through unity, sincere struggle, and faith in a better future that the pain of the past can be turned into strength to build a just society. This story is a call to action, a demand for change, and a hope for a brighter tomorrow, where everyone is heard and injustice gives way to equality and love.